People don't really see you as a human being. They just see you as a person in a black kit. You think you're cheating, you're either corrupt. That affected me a lot.
Are you happy to talk a bit about that?
That was the closest I've ever been to A, suicide, and B, finishing. Mark Clattenburg being accused of racial discrimination against 2 Chelsea players. Claire's hysterical. There's press outside the house. It was the worst 12 hours. I remember not sleeping, never went to bed.
Never fear a storm.
Be ready to adapt.
The skill is staying true to ourselves.
People talk often about the toll on a referee, the pressure of being a referee, the scrutiny that referees are under. But I don't think we really still understand referees. So when I talk about the toll, the pressure, the scrutiny, where does your mind take you?
Probably the whole journey from the start, from starting off refereeing. Even before that, my childhood, how I got into refereeing, because every young person wants to play football, and everybody went, why would you want to be a referee? Because I was a failed footballer, as simple as, because there's no way I'm going to give up playing football if I was going to be a referee. But when you get a chance, and people said I was half good at it, and I went through the systems fairly quickly, it became a no-brainer that, refereeing was always going to be my life. There's a part of, we'll talk about later on in this podcast about the different points in your career, which, there's things when you have to leave your profession to become a professional referee. There's another pressure. It's not just about the 90 minutes that people see you and abuse you when you give a decision against one of their teams. That's not the full aspects about refereeing. And that's probably one of the issues that the refereeing family have. They haven't promoted this enough. And that was probably back in my days where the management was quite protective. Now, I think under the new pigeonhole management of Howard Webb, I think it's a bit more open, and I think he's more happy for refereeing to come out and try and educate the people, because people don't really see you as a human being. They just see you as a person in a black kit who decides that you think you're cheating, you're either corrupt or you're just incompetent, and people try and work out which one it is, but we're actually neither. We're actually trying to make the game as best it can be, but also try and make every decision correct, because that's the most satisfying thing in the world.
Well, let's bring this conversation bang up to date then. Last season was the year of social media explanations about referees' decisions. It was also the year of a weekly TV show explaining exactly what had gone on. So there was more explanation of referees than ever before. Yet at the same time, the police were investigating horrendous abuse of Michael Oliver and his family. Teenagers who were refereeing at grassroots level were asking for body cams because of the amount of abuse they were getting. So what state are we in at the moment when it comes to the conversation around refereeing? Is it as bad or even worse than it's ever been?
Well, first of all, the Premier League has a duty of care. That's where it all stems from, because what everybody sees at the top level comes all the way and cascades all the way down to the grassroots. Yeah. So whatever they see at the top level certainly comes down. I think certainly from the Premier League and what the Premier League and Pigeonhole are trying to do, they're trying to make it as transparent as possible. Where I believe the pressures have got even higher now. When I was a referee, 7, 8 years ago, we were allowed to make a mistake. That mistake was a genuine, maybe a player ran across you, you didn't have a perfect angle, you weren't up with play because you were a human being. But because of the introduction of technology, which is what everybody wanted, because they wanted perfection in the game of football, it's actually caused and created this, I wouldn't say animal, but anxiety. There's a lot of anger towards the decisions even more, because they see it, and especially when it's an opinion, they still can't accept that opinion of the referee, because forget the technology, it's just another person getting another angle to see it. But it's never the referee, unfortunately. It's always the VAR that's making that judgment call, and it's creating this pressure, undue pressure. And I don't believe it's healthy for the game. I don't believe it's healthy for the refereeing family. I don't believe it's healthy all the way down to the grassroots, because that anger, what they're seeing on a Saturday, which they didn't have 10 years ago, because they just accepted the refereeing decision. I remember watching, and I still watch some old football from years and years ago, and the commentators would say, "Oh, that might be a foul," but it would be moved on. Now we're watching it in ultra HD, super slow motion, and it's repeated, which is just building a huge issue around the game. And I think everybody needs to have a hard, long look at themselves and work out where we want to go with this game, because there's more and more people switching off from this beautiful game that we love.
Look, there's no way you can put the technology back in the bag, right? That's here.
I think we can certainly find a way to make it better. I think we've got to accept that subjective decisions are human. I think where we had goal line technology, that was a huge step forward. We also have we could have ball in and out of play. The factual decisions offside. We're now even talking about the millimeter, but it's offside. It's factually offside. Probably we've had lots of goals over the last 20 years that have been given incorrectly when we look at technology, because what I see isn't always what the actual decision is. So all of this, when it comes to factual decision, I'm all for, but we can't have 2-3 minutes still talking about, is it a foul or not? Just leave that to the referee and allow the referee to referee again and have that, that enjoyment. He knows what that feeling's like on the field, not a guy sitting in an office in London.
So do they need to change the way that VAR is utilised?
Yeah.
They've got the technology. So what would be your dream then? If you were watching a game next season, what would be your dream use of VAR in a subjective decision?
All factual decisions. The offside is quite easy now, and it's getting quicker with the automated offside. Ball out of play, ball over the line, goal or not. And if it's a foul, if a referee gives a foul and it's clearly outside, the rest just leave to the referee. And if it's a challenge, if it's something, let the referee deal with it, because it's part and parcel of the game, and we're losing that element of the beauty of when a game was played. And I actually enjoy watching the FA Cup, and it was bizarre. The FA Cup was like a breath of fresh air. We even saw in the final when we did have VAR, it was still really, Crystal Palace won the final. Man City will say that Henderson should have been sent off and that. But that's where the beauty was. Now we're getting so much, Liverpool, Manchester United, all the top clubs are complaining week in, week out, saying, you've cost us points, you're affecting our chance to qualify for the Champions League. But there's huge sums of money, and that's where, we've got a lot of American owners now who, I think over 50% of the Premier League owners are American, and they're starting to bring in a lot of the legal actions. So, I'm not sure it'll ever get to that level where they would want to try and sue the PGMOL for a decision that's cost their team. But there will be chances in the future, because that's where the world's going now.
Here's the truth. Your body is like an engine, and you need to keep it at its best day in, day out. I mean, think of it this way. You wouldn't fuel a racing car on cheap fuel. So why are you doing similar to your body? I take Heights Vitals. I take them every single day. They stop me feeling run down, sluggish. I used to have brain fog. Not anymore. 2 small capsules. These act as my premium grade fuel. I'm keeping with the racing metaphor. So Vitals are a blend of vitamins, nutrients, minerals, omega-3, all the Bs, basically everything you need to perform at your best. So if you're looking for something that keeps you in the driving seat with your nutrition, your brain and body health, then this is it. Taken by athletes, Olympians, and even some well-known racing drivers. This stuff works. So if you're looking to fuel right this year, go to heights.com/Jake. Or enter the code HP20 at checkout for 20% off your first order and start your journey today.
And in the centre of this swirl of millions of pounds, millions of eyeballs, huge pressure, high stakes, global viewership, is one single person, a human being.
Yeah.
Would you take us inside the mind of that man in the middle in those controversial moments, the true toll on a human being? Because maybe the only way in the short term that we can change this narrative is to remind people that referees are human beings.
Yeah, the pressures are more now. If we go back to when I was a referee, it was still huge. And it was less when I first started. The pressure when I started in 2004 was a lot less, because I was a young referee, allowed to make mistakes, and everybody accepted it. Later on, when I became a more senior referee within the group and more an international referee refereeing at the highest level, then the scrutiny becomes even more because you're not allowed to make a mistake. And there was a time when I refereed a match, and it was Stoke Man United. And this fixture was always a one that referees dreaded, not because of the people, it was just a very difficult fixture. Stoke was always a difficult ground to go to. It was always cold, but it was always a difficult ground with a crowd. And Manchester United, when they came into town, they always came in the droves because it's such a short distance. So it built up always a difficult fixture. And when you get that game on a Monday, you think, you're then trying to prepare yourself mentally into the game on a Saturday. I remember coming off and thinking, I'd done a good job. And, the Manchester manager didn't think so. He thought I'd missed a penalty. And it played about in my head, even though I was a senior referee. It played about, and I didn't listen to the radio on the way back up home. But all that I could think about was this decision, and I just wanted to get home so I could replay it just in my own mind, that I was satisfied that I'd either got it right, or if I'd got it wrong, why I got it wrong, because he was adamant I'd got it wrong. And I'm driving up the M6, up the A1, and I can't remember any of the journey. And in fact, I went past 5 junctions on the A1 because I wasn't concentrating on my drive home because of this decision. And that's, people didn't realise when you've come off a game, everybody thinks you just pack up, you pack your bag and you go home. You don't. You're mentally playing the game again, trying to find certainly if you've made an incorrect decision, it's even worse. Yeah. But if you've got a decision that you're not clear on, it's playing about in your mind because referees didn't want to make mistakes. I certainly didn't want to make a mistake.
What was playing on your mind? Was it getting the decision wrong? Or was it having to face the music from the refereeing body? Or was it the criticism and the scrutiny and the ridicule of the fans? What was the fear?
I think if you put them 3 things into categories, the refereeing body was the least of your worries, because the worst thing, it was the pressures of social media and pressures of the media. Media was probably the second part because social media became so big, and the media knew they had a duty of care to protect your mental state. Social media doesn't. The abuse, the death threats I've had for years, it's getting more and more publicised now. But I used to just dismiss it. I used to think if somebody wants to write that on social media, they're not going to do it. So I used to dismiss it a lot. But you knew, it's interesting, if you refereed a match, no disrespect to the smaller teams. The smaller teams, I mean, everybody has a right to play in the Premier League, but I'm talking about crowd, world dominance. If you talk about Manchester United, they've got fans all around the world. If you talk about Southampton, for example, they haven't got as many, the fan base around. Yeah. So, and that Southampton will probably be the last match on Match of the Day, which doesn't have any scrutiny. They'll show 1 minute of action and it's quite dismissed. But if you're refereeing the big sides, then the scrutiny is so big, that if you make a call that is highly subjective, then that the things that are going to come at you and your family is just complete insults. And I used to have to tell the postman, I used to say to him at one point, my friend, please, if my name's on a letter and it's only my name, don't think you're doing me a service by posting it through my door, because it'll not be correct stuff. And he realised that people used to just put things in the Royal Mail, but Royal Mail used to think they were doing us a favour by delivering me post.
So the address would just be...
And there'd be letters in there.
Mark Clattenburg?
Yeah.
And it would get to your house?
Yeah, and it would just be hate mail. It would just be what they want to do to my wife, what they want to do to my children, what they just...
Honestly?
It was all over decisions. And it was... And they don't forget it. So you go and referee that team again, and you referee him again, and you referee him again. And nobody thinks about the consequence of that. Our pressure, when we're dealing with that, if we're going back to referee that same club again, our mental strength is to park it, move away from it, and try and get the next ones right, because we can't control what we did in the past, but they don't forget the past. Social media doesn't forget the past.
Were you able to park it?
Not always. but you had to at certain times. There's times where it affected you more.
Like when?
The Oba Mikel situation, that affected me a lot. It affected me family a lot. And I think that was the closest I've ever been to A, suicide, and B, finishing. The first part, I had a strong family around, so I survived the first bit. The second bit was harder to walk away from the game because I had a mortgage to pay, I had a family to pay.
Yeah.
And when I talk about before, when you have a cross in your career, when you leave your industry, you become a professional referee.
Yeah.
My industry was electrical, but unfortunately, because I'd been in football for 10 years or 8 years, my industry had moved on so much, I would have to qualify, retrain. There's a lot of other stuff, so I'd have to go through 4 or 5 years. And at that point, nobody would probably employ us. So I'm unemployable. So I've got a pressure, that other side of it, that it's not just about refereeing. I've actually got to protect my family because they put up with a lot anyways, as me being a referee, that I've got to protect them financially. So there was that point in my career in 2012 where I didn't want to referee anymore, but I had to because I needed to pay the mortgage.
Are you happy to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, of course.
When did you first realise that an allegation of racist abuse had been made?
I know exactly the point. Heathrow Airport, Terminal 5. It was just, I remember my mobile phone, everybody gets the notifications, and it was a Sky Sports notification. Mark Clattenburg being accused of racial discrimination against 2 Chelsea players. And I was just like, what? And then the phone call started through Mike Riley, through the board, who was the head of refereeing at the time. And then I was about to board a flight to Newcastle. And I had to make a phone call to the person at Newcastle Airport to try and get us through, because it was media camped waiting for us outside of the arrivals at Newcastle. So lucky enough, I could avoid it. But that was the moment. And I remember sitting on the flight. I didn't realise what was going to happen. And I remember, because we're boarding quickly on the flight, I'm sitting and my phone was off. So my phone's turned off. So I don't know what's going to be happening in the next 30 minutes. But I remember some boy sitting next to us, and I'll never forget it. He turned around and he says, "You've had a bad day today." And it just, because he must have read the message, and it was just like, and you're thinking, oh my word, what if he's reading it now? What's this going to happen?
Yeah.
What's going to happen? And the minute I landed, and, Claire, I'd had a newborn. She was only 6 months old, and Claire's hysterical. There's press outside the house, flashing, and it was midnight, when 11 o'clock or something like that at night, and they didn't know what to do because there was no safety network in place to protect. We lived in a house that can be exposed. It was interesting. Bruce Buck, who was the chairman of Chelsea, after the allegations were finished, he thought I lived in a gated community. This is the mentality of people in football. They think referees live in mansions and have private security. We're actually not. We're the opposite. We're just working class people trying to earn a living. And, that side of it made us realise that, did I really want to be a referee? Because no referee or no person should be put through that.
What was the hardest moment or the lowest moment for you after those allegations were made? Because I remember that time, and I was working in the media. I was working for a sports channel. I remember just thinking, well, he will know if he has or hasn't said something, right? So surely he'll be okay. But from what you're saying, it sounds like that's naive of me to think, oh, you'll be okay because you didn't do it.
It was the worst 12 hours. I remember not sleeping, never went to bed. And I was soul searching to think, because I didn't know what I'd said, that nobody had released what I'd said. So I'm trying to work out, did I say something, in the heat of the moment? You question yourself, of course. I was refereeing such a high volatile game with some decisions in the game. I sent off 2 Chelsea players for the background. Man United scored a controversial goal. That was the assistant made a mistake, which would have been rectified with VAR. However, the game finished 3-2 to Manchester United. And I'm searching to myself thinking, did I really do it? And that was the hardest thing, thinking I had done it. and it was only when time started to elapse and Chelsea couldn't provide the necessary information that A, what I'd said, B, when it was, what time of the minute it was, because I'm sure, and the more the time went on, I was more convinced that if I'd said something to a player, that player would have come and certainly stopped the game and said something, and there would have been some altercation. I'm watching a match back and there was no altercation between any players, just the normal run-of-the-mill stuff that you would see week in, week out. So the longer it went on, the more I felt that I was innocent. But that was the most difficult bit, knowing that you were innocent, but you can't speak. And the world's making a lot of stories, a lot of issue, like talking about it. I remember leaving on the Thursday because I couldn't stay in England anymore. I had to get the family out. The pressure was too big. And I remember the Pigeon Well got us out of Newcastle Airport in Malaga. And I put a cap on and people, thank God, didn't recognise us. And there was a couple behind us and they were talking about it because it was front page of the newspaper. And they were talking about it. And I think the man had said to his wife, "Do you think he said it?" And the woman said, "No, I don't think he said it. He's a Geordie that probably wouldn't understand his English." And I was chuckling to myself. And I remember going into a bar later that night, and there was another couple in the corner, and it was my friend's bar, and I'd left the bar, and I got a phone call from the bar owner. He says, "Mark," he says, "you'll not believe what just happened when you left." I says, "What?" That couple that was sitting there were watching it on Sky News and said, "Oh, I feel sorry for that referee. I hope he never said it, blah, blah, blah." And the bar owner said, "You should have asked him 5 minutes before because he was in the bar." And I went, "No way, that wasn't him. He looks fat on TV." I said, because, but that made us laugh, these little small things that made us laugh, and it helped us through certain points. But the pressure that people said, like at the end, Chelsea said they were duty bound to report an allegation of racism. I get that 100%. What I don't get is how it was dealt with and how it could have been dealt with better, because there was no protection that for the referees, or certainly me as an individual. They didn't care. They just think, "Oh, he's going to be all right." And that was probably the first side of what referees saw, and that was probably the hardest thing the referees had to deal with at that time. Yeah, we had little things to deal with. Referees being accused of swearing. That was easily dealt with, because if players want to play down that route, then a player swears at us, we'll red card them. "Oh no, we're not having that. Let's backtrack that." But this was the first big moment of the refereeing world where we're being challenged by one of the big clubs in an allegation that was absolutely unfounded. Even I still received lots of rubbish on social media that I'd done it. I was cleared. The facts were so clear. Omer Mikel wasn't the person that had heard it, which was the even most bizarre thing. It was Ramirez. And I even chuckled to myself. I listened to one of his interviews a week later on Sky, and he couldn't speak English. So to understand a Geordie with English, and he can't understand English, is one point. But Ober Mikel didn't hear it, and that's something that doesn't add up with me. And
was there ever an apology?
Never apology. They said they didn't want to apologise. They believed they were duty bound. But my argument being duty bound is, it took them 3 weeks to tell me the minute, is it first half, is it second half, is it late in the game? It took them 3 weeks to tell me. If they're that adamant, I've said something, why do you not say it was the 72nd minute? It's the 74th minute. There should be instant. It shouldn't take 3 weeks. And I think that's the anger from me towards football, the Premier League, Chelsea, was just, it was, ridiculous in the end that they were allowed to walk away from it with Ober Mikel, with an assault on a referee, only to receive a 3-match ban, was absolutely disgraceful. Where if somebody did that at grassroots level, it's sin die. So we'll go back to what go back to what we said before about the Premier League having an example to make. There's a big example where the Premier League didn't act and didn't protect in the right way, which, if referees don't feel protected, they're not going to be feeling protected at the grassroots.
And did you have a moment where you felt suicidal?
The first 5-6 days, it was really difficult. There was times where people didn't believe us. That first few days, everybody was thinking I was guilty. People were saying, if I had said it, then I should be sacked.
Yeah,
100%.
Why did you think that suicide might be the answer in that moment?
Because if I didn't have a way out and I couldn't referee anymore, what can I do? If I'm a racist and I'm not going to get a job in normal life, I'm not going to get a job in sport, my life's finished. So the consequences of something of my actions left us in a position where I'm thinking, I've got nowhere to go. I didn't have somebody to talk to on a daily basis. And yes, me family was there, but they don't know what really goes on. They don't really know what happens inside the world of football. I think, well, it's ridiculous. It should be dropped. But it doesn't work like that in sport and in the media. Everything, every day was building up. And there was, for example, it was a Black Lives Matter or something got involved, and the police got involved, and all these processes went through. And I'm thinking, it was like a circus, but it doesn't help me because every day my life's been played in the public eye.
And were you offered some sort of mental health support?
No, none. That's something that I think the Pigeon will have learned. I was left. It was only in the end, when I was about to be found not guilty, there was a person from media came to the house to protect us with the media that night when it was going to be announced that I was going to be found not guilty or there was no case to answer. And then the next day to work around some media obligations to handle the final bits so I could try and make a comeback.
And when you were at those low points in those first 5 or 6 days, what stopped you from doing it? What kept you here?
My daughter, my child, because she didn't deserve. She was only little. I brought her into the world, and it was my responsibility to look after her. And it was times when that was the one thing that was fighting us. If I was on my own and I was single and I was on my own, it was the easiest decision in the world. But when you've got responsibilities, it made us fight more. And I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping, and it builds. That it's not just a snap moment. It's a catalogue of lots of different things. Not eating, probably drinking alcohol a little bit more than you would normally to try and erase the pressures. But a lot of it was having an adverse effect of depression.
Well, alcohol's a depressant.
Yeah, and I'd known that later in life. But you've got that. You've got that all of the recipes going in, and then you're trying to wake yourself up on a morning without any purpose. Because you're thinking all today you're going to do is take phone calls, from different parts of the body dealing with the media, and I think there's certainly some learning points from that because it never happened before. But if I wasn't so strong-willed to come through with the family, I'm not sure I would be in here today.
Look, thank you for sharing it. And actually, even 13 years later, it's clear how much it still sits with you emotionally, right?
Yeah, of course. And some of it's still anger, of course, but you've got to park it and move on. Life's too short, and I've gone into different chapters of my life now. That's a chapter that I had, but a chapter that certainly, I didn't expect as a professional referee to be ever dealt with. And we've seen some referees having to deal with other situations, but personal stuff. But this is what shows, referees are human beings, but they've also got private lives. They've got families, and it's difficult. And, we've seen with Dave Coote over the last 6 months, the pressures of his life. And, we knew, certainly when I was as a referee, I knew certain parts of his personal life, but you don't know what's going on in their lives. And some people take choices, some people take decisions. And one of the hardest bit I've had to deal with, and I'm sure David's had the same problem, David Coot, is your friendships. I've lost so many friends and people calling us arrogant because I haven't done something. And it's because I was under so much scrutiny. For example, drinking a beer in a public place, in a way, even jumping, singing, like you would as a human, like a normal human, having a good time. You can't do that. And it affects you because everybody thinks you're boring. Everybody thinks, you're arrogant because you won't talk to them. But we've seen with David Coot, a video that was produced by a friend or a
so-called friend.
A friendship so-called friend.
Yeah.
But that's the scrutiny we've had to go through. And, we saw Bobby Madley, for example, with his ex-wife, videos being produced. And it's a hard world that they live in because, yes, they've got standards that they must reach, and they've got to reach them on the field of play. But they're also human beings. They're going to make mistakes. And a lot of them are mistakes because of pressures, because of the scrutiny that they're under as referees, because they're not. David Coot isn't David Coot, the person. It's David Coot, the referee.
David Coot's been charged with an aggravated breach of FA regulations. What's your reaction to that?
I can understand because in the words that he used on the video, he mentioned his nationality, Jürgen Klopp's nationality in German. And probably that's where the breach came in. Do I agree with it? No, I don't. I think it was said, it was in the heat. It was done between, two consenting, his friend or his partner or whatever it was between two people. He was, probably saying his opinion. Could he have said it in a better way? Should it have been videoed? This is probably now the way society is, that everything you say now is being documented, which is unfortunately the sad state that we're in. But I don't believe that would have ended his career. I still don't believe, even though he'd been charged, that wouldn't have ended his career. I firmly believe that. I think what's ended his career is the second press release the second piece of information that came out as his drug taken.
Yeah.
I think that was the end of the career, especially when it was on UEFA duty in a major tournament. When the videos were coming out, that was probably the end of his career because it becomes difficult to certainly promote younger referees into the game, knowing that you're allowing that type of behaviour. I think things that are said, I'm sure managers say things about referees, but it stays within their circles. Unfortunately, it's got out of his circle and he's got to pay the penalty. But I'm not sure what that charge will have reality happen.
Will he ever return to the game?
Never.
Do you honestly think without the additional video of taking drugs that his career could have carried on?
Yeah, definitely.
He couldn't have gone to Anfield and reffed games and things in the future, could he?
I think, come on, I think we've all said stuff. Mine just hasn't been released. I'm not saying somebody said to me, I'm a Man United fan the other week, and I had to remind them, are you so stupid of a person? And he went, what do you mean? You're a Man United fan? I went, if I'm a Man United fan, which stupid referee would give 3 penalties for Liverpool at Old Trafford? Are you stupid? That's the mentality. So there'll be one week I'm a Man United fan, the next week I'm a Liverpool fan. I've said something about Jürgen Klopp. I've said something about other. But what it is what his personal belief. Could he have said it in a better way? Probably. He'd had a few drinks and he was a little bit intoxicated. But he's only spoke as a person. Is it an integrity thing? We'll go back to that. Referees have to have a high level of integrity. But I'm not sure that would have ended his career. I think it would have been certainly a suspension or certainly a discipline.
Yeah.
But why would you say that ending a referee's career? Bear in mind he's put that much into it by a slip of a tongue to a person who's decided to put it out later on, a video of him doing something. I think it's sad. Honestly, I think it's sad today's society that something that's happened in a friendship or a relationship is now brought to their advantage and shown in the media years later. that can affect somebody's career. Everybody's done things in the past, but now we've got this technology. And that's something I'm really strong on. Again, today, you're on a train and somebody's taking a video.
Yeah.
You're probably a part of it, but we haven't got the laws yet that protect an individual. You go to another country in the United Arab Emirates, it's against the law. You have the protection. So, that wouldn't happen anywhere else in the world, but we allow it in England still because our laws are outdated, and we're now in a world of technology and social media, and we need to keep up with them laws because we need to protect the person as well. Not just David Coote, I'm talking about people in general, but, David Coote's made mistakes, and, he'll be in a dark place now, in a difficult place now because his career's ended and he's got no career, he's got no chance to be back into football and world. What does he do?
We also seem to want to end people as well, don't we now? We want people to be punished for their mistakes. It's no longer enough for someone to make a mistake and go, do you know what? It was wrong. I said something stupid. It was incorrect. There now feels like there has to be almost never ending punishment. You have to get cancelled. You're not non-platformed for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and I think that's a big difference now. I think not just in refereeing, I think the whole, even TV, media, everything now, you're right, has a consequence. Everybody wants the person to be sacked. You make a mistake or you say, you even say, you say a word that, I read something today in the media today, gents, that was used on an email, and all of a sudden it has a consequence behind it. And I'm confused where we're going with all of this terminology that, we're human beings. We all want to live a happy life and we all want to feel safe in this environment. Yeah. And as long as we feel safe and we're happy, we shouldn't have this worry about going back to this Dave Coote thing. I'm still not comfortable with that. I think it happened. He should serve his punishment, and that's the way it should have been. But unfortunately, it was the second bit that's caused him his biggest problem.
I think what people don't understand is when you're restricting who you truly are, then the pressure comes out in other ways. You've just said you were drinking too much by your own admission. David Coote, it was other pressures, and he released those in other ways. It still feels like there's so far to go until we treat referees like human beings. Like when I saw the David Coote story come out, maybe because of these kinds of conversations, I looked at it and I thought, something's going on there. And I hope someone puts his arm around that guy, because you don't do those things and say those things and act in that way unless there's some trauma behind the scenes. And all I saw was ridicule, criticism. Everyone couldn't wait to have an opinion. So I feel like we have not learned our lesson from people that have walked in David Coote's and your shoes previously.
I think listening to both sides of the argument, and I think one of the things that I've always tried to learn as well, and I've made mistakes, lots of mistakes, is people say that refereeing have a high level that they must adhere to and they must respect. And I think one of the hardest things is the way the world is. We have banter. I mean, we're in a pub with your mates, and what's he like to referee? I've said it millions of times. He's hard. He's whatever. It's what we do. Have a beer. You'd have a laugh, and that's where it used to end. And there was no mobile phones, no cameras, nothing. So it was just what we call, people having an opinion. The problem is now is people are taking videos of it or using it against them in later in life. And what Dave Coote did with, for example, Jürgen Klopp, he's got an opinion about Jürgen Klopp. I've got an opinion about Jürgen Klopp. Everybody will have an opinion about Jürgen Klopp. Is Jürgen Klopp a great manager? 1,000,000%. As a person, people will have that perception, same as me. He just expressed it, but because he's a referee, people think that because he's expressed his opinion, that he's going to be biased towards Liverpool or whatever. That's absolute garbage. Yeah. He's just made an opinion about a person. Jürgen Klopp could move from that club to another club to another club. That's what happens in life. I didn't get on well with Craig Bellamy. Craig Bellamy was great at Newcastle because A, I couldn't referee him, and B, was scoring goals for my team. But the minute he left, that was when my perception of Craig Bellamy changed. He might not like me and I don't like him. That's the way life is. We're not going to be always accepted. But I think where certainly David Coote could have helped himself is went for that help. I think we've moved on as an organisation from 2012 when I had my issues to lit now. I believe that group, a body of refereeing has moved so forward in supporting referees mentally, physically, and there was enough in place to, if he had an issue regarding his personal situations, then he could have went for help. And I think if he'd gone for help, I think his career wouldn't have ended. I think they would have had to support him and make him come through them difficult moments. And he could have served a suspension. He could have, took time out of the game and come back a better person. And I think, footballers, for example, they've taken drugs and they've come back. Refereeing drugs isn't the same as players' drugs because players can use it for enhancement. Referees can't use it for enhancement. It's because of the pressures around their lives. So it's always players and referees are treated differently, and referees have to, the way the world's got them, they've got to adhere to this higher standard that we can't talk about a football team, we can't talk about a player, we can't do this, we can't. For example, I would say if a player was caught with 12 points on his license, he would be suspended and nothing would happen. I think if a referee lost his license, probably he might get the sack. These are the fine margins that the human beings have to deal with.
Can I be honest? No one starts a business because they love doing the books. You're actually in it to create, to lead, to make an impact. But actually the admin, the tax returns, the expense matching, that stuff can drag you down. I know it drags me down. But that's where Tide steps in, because it's not just a business account, right? This is a system that can help you automate the boring stuff so you can focus on what you love and what matters. And I've seen how powerful this is. Automated invoices, live transaction tracking, tax tools, even savings accounts with market-beating rates. I promise you, going with Tide is like switching from a paper map to a sat-nav for your finances. And you don't need to be a financial expert to suddenly feel in control. You just need the right toolkit. And with Tide, you've got it. Sign up now with our code HP50 and get £50 cash back when you spend £100 on your new Tide card. T's and C's apply. Just click the link in the description. And how much does that play on your mind when you are a referee, that there is no job security? One bad game and you're out of a job. One misstep and you lose your career. One poor decision, you get vilified in the media.
Yeah, and I used to make a joke of it at first. I remember coming off. And when you refereed in the Champions League, you knew if you had a bad game, that was it. You were finished for that season. That was just the way life was. And I remember refereeing a quarter-final Bayern against Juventus, and it was my only decision that I got criticised by the Observer, and I deservedly got the mark I got. So that meant I wasn't refereeing any more Champions League games that season. And I remember coming home, and my wife goes, how was your game? I went, I haven't done very well. She went, what? It means I can't have that handbag. And that's the way they saw it. They didn't, I'm thinking, I want another game. She was worried about the cost of it, thinking it's cost us whatever it was, match fees. So there was that type. I think the more experienced you got, the less that became a problem. I didn't feel under pressure that I was going to lose my job. It was more on performance. The rest of it, I knew that I had to have some good friendship around. When I went abroad with my friends, they protected me a lot. They took us out of situations and they knew that could cause us a problem. So I had a good set of friends, but I never felt threatened on my performance. It was, but when you're a young referee, the pressure's even bigger, because when you're a younger referee in today's society, you can't make mistakes. I went back when I got on at 2004. I probably did make mistakes, but I was allowed to because I was young. The manager says, "Oh, he's a good young referee, him." So it was okay. It was like a young player coming into the first team. He's not going to be perfect, but unfortunately now we've got this world of perfection, and it's not a world that we can live in, unfortunately.
Would you want to be a young referee coming through now?
Never. I wouldn't have. People say to me, what's your advice? I would say, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. I know the recruitment now in England's higher than it's ever been. I believe that there's probably better systems in place. I think from when I first started at 16 years old in the local leagues in the Northeast, you had to come through the Sunday morning. And the Sunday morning, for any of the viewers, is people that have just come out the pub from the nightclubs on a Saturday night before. It's a game of survival. And people say to me, you should apply the laws of the game. On a Sunday morning, you've got the laws of the game and you've got the survival of the game. And you've got to find a balance of them both, because if you don't, you're not going to come off that pitch alive. So you've got to find at 16 years old, somebody used to say to me, it's incredible that a 16-year-old to an even 18-year-old could manage them situations, conflict management.
Yeah.
And that conflict management helped me later on in life. I remember being out in a bar on a Friday night when I was 18 in Whitley Bay in the Northeast, and a player was really aggressive to us in the toilet. I'd refereed him previously, 100%. I didn't know who he was, but he was really aggressive. But I had to find a way out of it, and I managed my way out of it. And I said, look, I apologise, I made a mistake. On hindsight, I wish I'd done that. I didn't. I can't even remember anything, but it was a way of diffusing a situation without him being more aggressive. And we ended up walking away without any issues. So these conflict managements probably helped us going forward in my working life, early part of my working life, but also when I got into refereeing, at the top level, because people talk about the laws of the game, but you've got a lot of, conflict management, you've got the game management, you've got a lot of other aspects of the game that people don't see. They just think, well, you've got laws of the game, you must apply them. Unfortunately, you haven't just got the laws of the game, you've also got, you've got the criteria is what the Premier League want, what the PGM World want, what the game wants, what Sky want, what everybody wants. And I remember coming off at 0-0 and Sky are upset because the game's boring 0-0. And I'm like, go and speak to the 22 players, and because mate, what can I do? They're the ones that are entertaining, not me. But the refereeing was always put in a way that, you've got to do this, you've got to try and do that. And for me, all of these issues that referees had, and it's about life experiences. Go back to me younger days when I was in like 9 and 10 years old, trying to find a way to get out of school, and find the best way home, because I came from a council estate, and council boys weren't accepted in the group. I was lucky, I was fortunate that I played football, so I was allowed into the group. I was partially allowed in the group. I wasn't fully allowed in the group, but I was the only one of that background that was allowed to play football in the group, and that allowed us a little bit of survival. I had a little bit of protection, but I didn't have full protection, and that allowed me, me finishing my last lesson at school, working out which way I'm going to run home, so I didn't get bullied or hit. They're the survivals that helped me, certainly in my younger days as a referee. And I didn't need that survival when I went to the highest level, because you had that much, support and security at the games. You got abuse, but you never had that effect when you're in the stadium. It's when you went out of the top level and you went down to grassroots. That's the hardest. But I remember even when I was in the Premier League, I refereed a game for my friend. He had a Sunday morning team, junior team, under 15s, and he said, Mark, please, can you referee a game? And I'm like, I think I'd refereed West Ham, on the Saturday, and I'd come up from London, and I refereed, it was in the afternoon of Sunday, and I didn't really want to do it, but I said I'll do it to help him out because it was a top-of-table clash. And halfway through the game, his father just started screaming at us, you can't keep up with play, you're a referee, you're fucking biased, you're a cheat. And only because I was a bit experienced, I would have hated being a young referee. And I just I stopped the game. I wasn't getting any money for the game anyway. I wasn't bothered because I was doing a favour for my friend. I just stopped the game. And I just walked over to the gentleman. I had my whistle and I just dropped it on the floor and I said, I'm off. See you later. If you can do a better job, just do it. I'm off. I don't need this. Within 10 seconds, that guy was escorted out because they realised that I wasn't going to referee anymore and they wanted me to referee. And he wouldn't do it because it was all just talk. But I can't say how young referees could do that. It's only because I had a bit of experience that I could do it. And I had to, I didn't care. But I feel for the young generation now that they're just, and I say this about the fathers. When I used to watch football, youth football, I never used to say anything because it's better not to say anything. Never criticised, even if the coach is doing bad or the referee made a mistake. I never used to say anything, even when I was watching the games as a Premier League referee. I didn't say anything. But the fathers were like frustrated. Probably that their sons, they weren't a professional footballers, so they're taking it out on their sons. And you're like, come on, is this the way we are going? That the abuse the coaches get, the referees get, and the fathers are just, venting their frustration out at everything,
In so many ways, I think the discourse around refereeing is a reflection of life. The criticism we have for each other on social media, the sort of disgusting way in which we talk to each other now. Even politics has gone the same way. It's this way or that way. There's no middle ground. There's no unity. Everyone's shaking fists rather than shaking hands. And the problem is referees have to get through that to get to the top level. And I'd love to talk about the top level because we can't talk about high performance without going into the heights that you reached, because you don't become one of the most celebrated referees globally by accident. I mean, there's this incredible 7-week period where you refereed the FA Cup final, the Champions League final, and the final of Euro 2016. Physically, I'm sure it was demanding, but I'm fascinated in how you mentally prepared yourself for a summer that was going to give you so much, but was also going to take so much from you.
Yeah. If you go into them 3 games, it was, if we lead up to the FA Cup final was the first one. And it was interesting that I actually had the appointment of the Champions League before the FA Cup.
Right.
Which was surprising because I'm not sure I would have refereed the FA Cup.
And how does it happen? Do you just get a phone call?
Yes, I remember I was going down to St. George's Park where we used to meet every Monday. And it was a unique situation because as a referee, we set goals. I set goals at the start of the season. And one of my goals was to referee a second leg semi-final.
Right.
I'd refereed one before. I'd refereed Bayern Munich, Barcelona in 2013, I think it was.
And do you write these aims down? How do you...
I just remember them. So I'm always mentally preparing. So I knew I'd done one and I thought, I want another semi-final because then I'm building myself up.
Yeah.
Because you can't just go, a referee at 30 years old, 3 Champions League games, can't referee the Champions League final. Doesn't matter how good a season he has. He needs experience. He needs, also the clubs need to know who he is to respect him, and it makes your life a lot easier. If they think you're a good referee, players, they don't try it on as much. But preparing myself, so when I was heading down to St. George's, I took a phone call. So going back to what I was saying, semi-final, I'd already refereed a semi-final.
Yeah.
So I did the first leg. It was Atlético Bayern. Perfect game. Message after the match from Pierluigi Collina, which I always wanted. Congratulations, well done. Thank you very much for a great performance. Game was perfect from a refereeing point of view. Yeah, there might have been a free kick missed or a handball missed, but everybody was happy.
And Collina, for those that don't know, is the legend of all legendary refs. And at that time was the head of UEFA refereeing.
Yeah, he was the head of UEFA referees. So when you get a semi-final, there's no way you referee a final. Why? Because you've already refereed one team before. So I get the argument that one team would be upset. Oh, he had them in the semi-final, they won. They've got an unfair advantage. In this situation, I was quite fortunate that Atlético had won. I'd refereed them 3 times during that course of that Champions League campaign. And Madrid, I never had a bad performance, or the results always went their way. So it was a bit of win-win situation for me. And to not think that you're going to get the final and you get a phone call from Pierluigi Collina, and he said to us, he called in, I had to ring him back because I was on the M1 and I had to pull up onto the off a slip road and then park.
And were you thinking, I know what this is about here?
Well, no, I thought I was going to, because all the media was pointing towards Jonas Eriksson, who was a big friend of mine. He was a Swedish referee, and all the media were pointing towards him. He hadn't refereed a semi-final. So then you think he hasn't done a semi-final. So when I got a phone call from Pierluigi Collina, he said to us, how's things? Congratulations on your season. I've got a message for you. And I says, oh, what's your message? And he said, I want you to come to Milan. And Milan was where the venue of the Champions League final was in 2016. And I says, oh, thank you very much. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to being fourth official to Jonas. And he said, sorry. I says, I'm going to be fourth official to Jonas. He said, no, you're going to be referee. I went, don't be stupid. And he went, Mark, sorry. Because he's English, like he's joking, it's different Italian. And he said, do you not want to be the referee for the final? I said, of course I do. He says, congratulations. And it was like an amazing first call I made to my wife. And you know what she said? She didn't care about the game. She went, I've got to worry about what I've got to wear for the final now. It was
quite
typical.
Right.
Yeah, typical.
But she sounds like a high performer herself. She keeps your feet on the ground.
I was like, I'm talking about doing the final, and she's like, you're worried about what you're going to wear. But that was another fight.
That's exactly what you need in your life.
But I remember getting to St. George's and I couldn't speak. I could only speak to the two assistants. And Anthony Tiller and Andre Mariner were going to be the two additionals behind the goal. So I spoke to them privately because Andre Mariner was on holiday. And when they called us, they said, you need to speak to Andre to see if he's going to be on holiday or not. Can he break his holiday? So I spoke to him privately, said, look, I've got the Champions League final, I can't speak. It's going to be announced at 5 o'clock on Sky. They're going to make the announcement. Sky will pick it up. Are you available? He said, yes. So I made a phone call back to UEFA. And we had to have a training session. None of the Premier League referees knew, except the internal one, the ones that I had to inform. And it was the best training session I'd ever had because I was on cloud cuckoo. It was like I was running faster. I was enjoying training for the first time. And when it was announced, I was in my bedroom and we had to come down for dinner, and the whole canteen clapped that I'd been given the final 6 years after Howard Webb did, 2010. So it was great that an English referee was refereeing the Champions League final. And it was great that I was going to be the lead referee for the game. And all of a sudden, the mixed emotions come in. You've got people wanting tickets. You've got all of the media scrutiny around, are you good enough to referee Champions League and all of this. So you're having to deal with all the emotions, even though you've been given the task by UEFA. You've still got the negativity around on social media saying he's not good enough.
Did you read that?
No, but you're privy to it because people show you it's on. So it's on. Sometimes the media like to repeat what people are writing. But this is where the hardest bit came in. Was I was then given the FA Cup final after the appointment of the Champions League. So the FA Cup was exactly a week before, and the preparations for the FA Cup final were as normal. The fitness levels, everything was right. And you've still got the pressures, strange enough at that time. I don't know if the referees still do, but we don't get time to relax on the evening of the final. We actually have to go to a rally where ex-referees, and there's a speech. And so you're actually not getting dinner till sometimes 10 o'clock at night on the eve of the FA Cup final. It's not an excuse for performance. I'm just saying that preparation-wise, it's slightly different to a normal game where you'd be relaxing in the hotel. You're actually still halfway across London dealing with some media engagements which could have been avoided, but that's a part of the Football Association's tradition, the eve of final rally that you had to attend. But going into the final, which was huge for Crystal Palace and Manchester United, the game didn't play out the way I dreamt it the night before, because I used to visualize a lot, especially before big games on the night before a game. So I would never sleep properly, but I would play about in my head how I would hope that the game would be played. Like, I used to love fast-flowing games, love to play advantage. I was hoping that these games would be, the FA Cup final would be the same, and certainly didn't. The first 5 minutes, I don't know if I wanted to be involved. I tried to get involved. Like a player wants to get a touch on the ball, I blow my whistle, should have played advantage. Players did stop, of course. Hindsight's a great thing, but Crystal Palace fans were upset that I didn't play an advantage early in the match. Quite rightly so. People forget that I cautioned Chris Smalling for the challenge. If I'd played an advantage, I might not have cautioned him. He did get sent off later on in the game when it was 1-1. They still had big chances. Unfortunately, they didn't win, and they were always looking. But I remember coming up, and I didn't want to go getting me medal. I'm thinking to myself, I'm just going to get dogs abuse. So I go up one side, which was Crystal Palace fans, and they're just giving us dogs abuse. And I mean, horrible things. I'm walking up, my head's down. I didn't want to go and get me medal. And I know that, people from the Football Association will be smiling secretly that I haven't refereed perfectly well for my standards.
Do you think so?
No, yeah, 100%.
Why?
Because my wife even told us, later on that night, what certain people were saying at the dinner table. They were laughing that I hadn't played an advantage, and his smug smile would be off his face. Some of them didn't want you to perform to the highest level because they didn't want you there. I probably only got the FA Cup final because I had the Champions League final.
Not names, but what type of people were doing that?
The top people.
What, at the FA?
Yeah, the top people.
But surely that's their showpiece game. Surely what they want is the referee to demonstrate how amazing he is.
But they didn't want me. They didn't want me to referee in the Champions League final. They didn't want me to referee in the Euros. They didn't want me involved. They wanted their people. People maybe they can trust. I don't know. But we can go back some steps. That's what drove me on. We'll talk about that in a second. Yeah. What drove me forward. But when I went up one side of the steps, I'm getting abuse of Crystal Palace fans, gets me medal, and then I just get absolute dogs abuse from Man United fans. And I get to the bottom and I'm thinking, what am I doing? What? I was at my lowest. I'm thinking in refereeing world, not mentally, I'm talking about how you feel as an individual when you hate it that much. Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, I need to analyse myself. And normally after the finals, a celebration with your families, all of your team. I never felt like celebrating. I felt like I just wanted to go to bed. And the next day was the Sunday, and I remember sitting in Covent Garden and thinking, I wish I'd done that. I wish I'd done that. I wish I'd done that. I was so miserable on the Sunday because I couldn't switch off. I was trying to work out what went wrong, why I could have done better, why I allowed that, why did the pressure get to us early in the game when I'm experienced. I've refereed at Wembley before. It's not my first time. I'd refereed the Olympic game final in 2012 there, so it wasn't a new stadium. And then I realised, I'm thinking, hold on, I've only got 6 days left, and I'm going to referee the Champions League final. So I've gone from soul searching on the Sunday to then on the Monday, waking up thinking, that's it, back to training, back preparing for the Champions League final, and remembering that I had to try and switch off what had happened the week before in one of the biggest games in Europe, knowing that the world's going to watch, not just English and part of the world. We've now got the whole world watching, and you're thinking, please, let's just hope that the match goes okay. I would have to watch it back because I still can't remember what happened in any of the games, because in finals you just never enjoy them. The pressure's that big. I can't even remember anything that happened in the games.
Isn't it mad though that you work all your life thinking one day I'll referee a final? You do, and that's your lived experience of sitting there kind of attacking yourself in the evening because you felt like you did badly. And we've just spoken for ages about empathy and understanding and care for each other. It almost feels like you were so surrounded by criticism and negativity, you sort of started doing it to yourself.
Yeah, but you're a human being. Everybody wants praise. We don't want negative. But with refereeing, you're going to get more negative. You very rare get the praise. Even when I played so many great advantages that led to great goals, still never really got the praise, because they'll still talk about a missed free kick that you give 69 minutes. There's so much, any one mistake. Crystal Palace fans, they can throw their anger, they still throw their anger. Even when they got the FA Cup final this year, I read a lot of stuff. And you're thinking, hold on. Anything could have happened from that moment. The goalkeeper stopped, defender stopped. I've cautioned Chris Smalling, he gets sent off, you're 1-1. If you're down to 10 players, which should be an advantage, if you go and win the cup final, that decision that I made in the first minute is a positive to you. They don't see it as a positive because they're lost. They're looking for an excuse to blame someone. They don't blame Alan Pardew for a substitution. They don't blame a player who didn't make that. He didn't backtrack for the Wayne Rooney goal. All of these aspects, they never blame. the only one to blame, the easiest person in the world, who unfortunately is always the person that is the easiest target, is the referee.
Well, you pick yourself up. You refereed the Champions League final just 5 days later. Even though you can't remember anything about it.
Yeah.
You did. One day, do you think you'll watch it back?
I would love to watch it back. I would love to watch it. But one of the best moments, there was 2 moments afterwards, but 3 moments afterwards was, well, there was a few moments afterwards, but one of the key moments was, I remember going up for my medal, and it was a long walk, because we're up height and we had to walk along this tier towards the presidents, and Infantino was the UEFA president at the time, and we shook hands, and he says, "I'm looking forward to seeing you at the World Cup." In my back of my mind, I'm thinking I might not be there because I'm thinking about Saudi Arabia at the time, but I didn't tell him that. And we got all the medals, and everybody was so positive. So from that week before of negativity, there was so much support from UEFA and the people around. They were just thanking us for a great, because the Atlético derby isn't an easy derby to referee.
Yeah.
You know, it's brutal. You know, 2 teams going at each other, and there's players on that pitch knowing they're trying to take every little bit of advantage to try and win the game of football. That's the way that game was. And everybody was satisfied about the way the game was. And I came down on the pitch. Simeone came to us, and he just tapped his chest and he went, "Well done." And Zidane came up and said, "Congratulations." And I thought, both coaches come. That's perfect. That's how I want to have my refereeing, that both managers are satisfied. Yeah, there'll be things in the game that they might not be happy with, but overall, I didn't affect the result. The result was fair. The best team won. That's where referees want. And getting back towards my dressing room, and I goes up to my dressing room, Pierluigi Cleaner, the boss of the head of refereeing, was waiting. And he just gave us this biggest cuddle.
Wow.
And it made us feel $1 million, knowing that he respected my job. He gave us the support I need. And he made me the referee I was, because there was negativities in my career, but he always stuck by us and he always supported us. And I tried to repay him by my performance. So that cuddle meant a lot, because that was my appreciation for him, for A, giving us the appointment, and B, supporting us, but also his support back, that the game, even though it was difficult, was well refereed in a difficult environment. So, you know, I ended up crying in front of him, and he said, "You know, why are you crying?" And I just broke down, you know. It was like complete emotion. Never slept that night. And I remember calling Claire half 4 in the morning, because she wasn't allowed to stay with us after the match. They had to stay in their own hotel. And I just called her, I said, "Please come over, I can't sleep," and just cry me out. The emotion was just so much. It was just incredible, like how the high of building yourself up for that final, and the low when it was all over, was just so incredible. But lucky enough, I had people around us.
So why were you crying? Because it was over and you'd done it.
It was the pressure, knowing that you didn't want to make a big mistake.
Yeah, and you hadn't.
And I knew I hadn't. There was decisions in the game, of course, but I knew that I hadn't influenced the result.
And do you think 2012, where you were close to walking away from football, also was playing into your emotion that night?
A lot of everything, yeah. There was not just 2012, 2008 when I was sacked from, because I had problems with my ex-partner and business partners, and I was removed from my position for a period of 8 months. All of them, and all the dark moments, and all the bad performances, and all the abuse you took, was all in one, that I've done it. A person from Cramlington who didn't have much, but wanted to prove to everybody that I wanted to be the best in the world at something. And I still laugh at sometimes, because when I used to be an electrician, we used to have our breaks at 10 o'clock, and I used to go and always have to get the sandwiches as an apprentice, and most of them used to say to us, "Mark, you were just a time waster. You never wanted to be an electrician, you always wanted to be a referee." And for them to see that, to achieve, they didn't believe that could happen. Nobody could ever believe that I could referee a Champions League final.
Mm.
and to be voted the best referee in the world in 2016, 2017, over all of the referees in the world, it gives us that satisfaction that whatever happens in your life and how many people put you down, if you fight, you can still achieve. And I've had so many downs, so many people fighting against us. And I'll give them one message. If it wasn't for them, and they know who they are, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have been the best referee in the world, because they didn't really know us as a person. If they got to know me as a person, they would realize that when I had something, I got bored. And when I got bored, I got lazy. I wouldn't have wanted to be the best in the world because I was just happy. But because they kept damaging us, wanting to push us and put us down, I thought, you know what? I'm going to push harder. And when I pushed harder, I got fitter. I was in better positions on the field to play. I was making better decisions. And that's what made us the best in the world.
That is so fascinating, because there'll be a lot of people watching this or listening to this who are in a hard place at the moment, thinking the fact they're in a hard place means they're also in a bad place. But actually, you're saying being bullied as a kid was vital. The Sunday League football when you were a kid was vital. Being suspended in 2008 was vital. The racist abuse allegations in 2012 were vital. All of these really hard moments were not necessarily bad for you. They were building you up for this moment when you could finally deliver.
And that's when that whole emotion, the crash, forget about the Euro final, that's slightly different, but that crash on that Champions League final was just a build-up of everything that had happened all during my career, and actually give something back to my family to say, look, I've actually done it. I've got the medal, and I've actually, always be remembered that I've refereed the 2016 Champions League final, which not every referee can say. And, everybody has a lot of negatives. Everybody has problems in their lives. And it's the way I used to try to deal with it was a lot of reflections. So I would always try and look at positives. I think one thing is we do as individuals probably too much is look at the negatives. And that's probably us as human beings. And, why I stopped looking at social media, because it's 99.99999% is negative. You're never going to find that positive. So what you've got to do yourself is to think the positive is that I've done it, I can do it, and allow you to achieve. And when you have these dark moments, you can say, look, I've had that moment. I've had dark days since, even when I finish, because when you finish refereeing, you think, what am I going to do next?
Yeah.
You have your dark moments, but then people said, why did I have these tattoos put on my arm? They meant a lot to me. And the media was so negative about it, and I was so angry about it, because one thing that upset us was people try to betray you as a person because I've got tattoos. Them tattoos meant a lot to me, because when you're having dark days, I don't have to go into the memory. I just look at my arm and go, actually, I did it. I actually did it. And it puts us as a positive. And people say, well, you shouldn't have to ink your arm for that. But that's my way of dealing with it. I'm allowed to. I haven't broke the law. I'm allowed to have memories and special marks. Thank God I didn't have girlfriends on my arm. They'd be all down my arm scratching them off. But have them special memories is amazing. So for me, it's a positive, not a negative. But a lot of people had it as a negative, saying he's up his own arse and all that. It wasn't about that. That was for me to remember it, because refereeing, there's so many dark days, so many dark moments, because you're an individual. You're not a football team. If a player's having a bad day, he's got his teammates. Refereeing, you're on your own 90%, 95% of the time. You go home after a match. The management don't see you till probably 2 days every few weeks. So
I'm so glad you've reached a point where you're able to reflect and be proud of what you achieved, what you did in your career that no one can ever take away from you. You did, just after those two games, also referee the European Championship final. Were you able, after reaching the high of the Champions League final, having just done the FA Cup final, were you actually able to enjoy that game and think, okay, this is cool?
I enjoyed the tournament, but the pressure was building again because the expectations on me was higher. I'm not just a UEFA referee. I'm one of UEFA's elite referees. So my first match, I had to wait a little while, was Belgium-Italy. And this is where my first match. And I tried to play an advantage to Italy. They were 2-0 up in the last minute. And Pierre-Louis, next day, we're having a debrief. He sent us a message after the game saying, fantastic, well done. Because Belgium-Italy was the first big game of the tournament. And Italy won 2-0. Belgium had a good team at that time. And he said, well done, I'll see you tomorrow. So we get into the meeting. All my team was there. Anthony, Andre, my 2 assistants, Pierluigi Cleaner, Hugh Dallas, who was number 2 at the UEFA, Pierluigi. Mark Batter was another UEFA referee committee member. And I said, how do you think it went? I said, yeah, I was happy. I said, but I probably shouldn't have played that advantage in the last couple of minutes. He said, why? And I said, because Italy are 2-0 up, they want the free kick. He says, exactly. You know, so we had that relationship where he was actually, I'm still trying to find the perfections, and he's laughing, knowing that I would tell him the answer because he knew what I was like as a person. I wouldn't just say, I've been brilliant. I would say, well, why? I shouldn't have played that advantage. I should have just given the free kick. I did give the free kick in the end, but small details. And it was the next match that made us. It probably made me tournament. It was Poland, Croatia, Czech Republic. And it was in Santander. And we knew there was going to be trouble before the game. So people talk about the laws of the game. I'm going into a game knowing there's going to be crowd violence. We just didn't know when. The game was going to get interrupted by Croatian fans. So the intelligence was all there. We're getting told what.
And what was your protocol?
So we don't know. We don't know how it's going to happen. We don't know when it's going to happen. We don't know the level. So we don't know, do I stop the game? Is it sporadic where it's one firework and we can get it off and restart? And it happened, I think it was about 83 minutes. And the firework came on. Then more fireworks. Players were trying to put them out. They were throwing them at the goalkeeper, their own goalkeeper. So I suspended play. We moved back to the halfway line, got everybody safe. And then it got dispersed about 10 minutes later, restart play. And I gave a penalty against Croatia for a handball that everybody thought it was the opposite way. But I was in a good position. I was confident. I saw it and give the penalty, and it finished 2-2. And Croatia were one of the favourites. Czech Republic were happy. I remember David Suka came in, who was the Croatian president, or one of the entourage, and thanked us for the game. So I knew the penalty was correct. And Kalina again, message, well done, Mark, but I'll see you tomorrow.
And is there any part of your brain in those big moments where there's more than just football on the line, where you're just second guessing your decision because you know also this is a political decision. This is this goes beyond the game.
Yeah, and this was it. But then this is my management talking about my management, even political with Kalina, was forget about the Croatian. I knew I had to deal with it and I had to handle it as a referee. So it wasn't just about the laws of the game. I had to know when, like how to handle it afterwards. But with Kalina, for example, I knew he wasn't 100% happy with my performance. I could just feel it. And the minute I get into the meeting room the next day, he asked us how he said he wrote on a piece of paper something and he laid it on the table. And I thought, what's he wrote? But in my head, I'm thinking, So he said, how do you think it went? I said, I've done better. I felt I could have refereed better. And everybody in the world's thinking I've had a great game. And I said, I didn't feel the same. I know it was only 3 days after my last game. I just didn't feel I was at the same levels. And yeah, all the big decisions are correct. Nobody's complaining. Everybody's really happy. But the small details I wasn't comfortable with. I could have managed this situation better. And he turned the piece of paper. It was exactly word for word what I'd said. So he's like happy that I've recognised it.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that so it was not a game, but he understood me and I understood him, that I knew he wasn't happy. So there's no point me going in. And I remember Anthony Taylor's face. It was, like I said, he was addition behind the goal. And Anthony was shocked that I'd actually said that I hadn't had a good game. Because he's thinking, you're not going to get another match now. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. Politically, I've done a perfect job. the game's finished without any controversy. We're talking about the small details. And
Yeah.
this is what the top sportsmen do. They find the smallest details to improve. And that's them small details made me a better referee. Because if I just sat there and thought, I've done a good job there, everybody's happy, and I didn't want to look for an even more 1% more better performance, I wouldn't have probably got the final.
And you did.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in your relationship with Kalina, because I look at your career and I think like David Ellery was in charge of English referees, David Riley was in charge of English referees. Your face tells a picture there, and then suddenly in comes Pierluigi Collina. So how different was the way that they managed you and managed people compared to Collina?
David Ellery was different. I don't think my accent helped, if I was honest,
Really?
being from the north. I always felt that at that time the FA was very political. For example, I'm on a trip as a fourth official and I got reported for having my tie longer than or shorter than it should have been. So that you had to deal with them pathetic
Micromanaging.
Yeah, but it didn't affect performance. But they always took it. I was always as a fourth official. They always wanted us there as a fourth official because I would die for them on the field to play. But I was always like they were trying to score points. Some of the referees to the management, and I felt that the management didn't support us in them actions. And it was the same with Mike Riley in the Premier League, that I wasn't, for example, pre-Euro 2016, I wasn't getting games in the Premier League, and I felt that I was being targeted deliberately to try and affect me chances of going into the Euro, which at that time I was very fortunate that Pierluigi Collina was the head, because he decided that he wanted me in the tournament. How it works is that the federations have the say. So the federation chose Martin Atkinson as the representative from England, which UEFA accepted, of course. But then UEFA stepped in, and I was the only, for the first time ever in a tournament, a referee from the same country was allowed to go to a tournament. Never happened before. It was the first tournament where a referee, two English referees or two referees from any country went to the same tournament.
So, can I just ask what you think was going on here then? So you're refereeing the FA Cup final and you get the sense the FA love the fact that you didn't referee it to the level you would have wanted. And then UEFA ask for the referees to be sent to the Euros and they don't send you, but you just refereed a Champions League final and an FA Cup final. Like, is there any element here where it was the way you were behaving, you think? Or was it personal relationships? Or was it politics?
Maybe because, and I always analyse, I look back at myself now, I wasn't perfect. You know, I probably shouldn't have bought that car. I shouldn't have bought that watch. I shouldn't have probably bought them clothes. But what is a referee? What is a stereotypical referee?
Mm.
I didn't know. I was just being my personality, why wasn't I allowed to have my personality? Why shouldn't I? Why should I conform? I wasn't saying I conform. I was very professional. But if I wore something, I wore it. I should be allowed to do and wear what I wanted. But it just didn't seem to stick with them people at that time. I think it's changed hugely now. But, you know, for example, having a beard, you weren't allowed to have facial hair. That was frowned upon. So if you had facial hair, you would be reported. And I did have one. I think it was Blackburn, Sunderland. David Ellery was a referee. I got reported for having a bit of facial hair. So all of this goes into situations where, you know, certain people had their idea that they wanted that person to be the best referee, the referee that leads the country forward in tournaments. We had Graham Paul. Then we had Howard Webb. The FA tried with Martin Atkinson, but I was the one that broke that mould. But that's what drove me forward. Them negatives and them individuals telling me that I wouldn't be at the next tournament and I wouldn't be representing England at them tournaments made me push even harder. And them when they weren't doing that to us, I was finding it hard to go to the gym. I wasn't motivated.
Right.
I found it really difficult. But every day that they pushed and made it negative for us, the harder I worked in the gym. I went from 92 kilos to 75 kilos. Took that 2 stone. I became thin, athletic. My movement, my positioning, my fitness levels were another level because they made me push harder. I remember my fitness coach in UEFA saying, why are you doing 48 high intensity sessions per week? Because I feel like it. I want to, because they were getting to us. So that was my way of pushing my body even harder because I wanted to be the best I could be. So without that negativity and without that drive, they had the negative effect. If they'd actually supported us, I probably wouldn't have went to the Euro because I would have got bored and probably not pushed myself, and I probably would have allowed somebody else to take my place. But without that, without negative, where Kalina was clever, he did it in short bursts. And I'll remember what he did. And I was always one of his favourites, if I would say. He supported us a lot, but in return, I give him everything I had. And my style of refereeing started to work because I like to manage players. I like to control situations in my own style. And I think UEFA football wanted that at that time. They wanted, because there was so many free kicks and so many whistling, the game started to move and evolve. And my style of refereeing helped that because they wanted more game time. They wanted more advantage. They wanted, less yellow cards. They wanted people with personality. So that's my style of refereeing. Helped that. But I remember one night, and it was in Malmö. Never forget it. And the match was Malmö Atlético Madrid. And I thought my career's over. And there was lots of problems that have happened before the game that were out of my control, but ultimately I'm the boss. So in UEFA matches, there's a morning meeting. The delegate went for the first time without the fourth official. They stopped all the match officials. Normally the referee used to go, but then they moved it to the fourth officials with the match observer. Then it was just a match observer. So I asked the match observer after the meeting, are the team colours okay? Yes, they're okay, Mark. Perfect. Okay, no problems. So we goes to the game, and me being me, we'll have 4 colours to choose from. We always took the 4 colours to the matches. However, when I'm in the hotel, because we have a badge, a FIFA badge, I stick my FIFA badge on and stitch it because sometimes with the sweat that come off, so I stitch it so it's all prepared in the afternoon. And because I know the colours, I don't take the rest of the kit because there's no point in my bag. I've got the one kit, I know which kit it's going to be. And what comes out of the tunnel, and there's no issues. Atlético have got their tracksuit tops on. Malmö, I think, were playing in blue. And they took the tracksuit tops off Atlético after the Champions League anthem. And I must have been their 12th man. I was in the same colour kit as them in their Champions League match. And I couldn't delay. You can't delay the kickoff because everything's synced. So I have to start the match. They're passing us the ball. The players are whinging. It gets to half time. When he asked the guys, can we change kits? I knew I didn't have. I said I could take the fourth officials. Hopefully the assistant referees have got theirs. Nobody did. We only had one kit, one black top. So I said, look, I'll put the black top on. The 2 assistants had yellow. After the match, the game was, from a refereeing point of view, no issues. But the email I got from Pierluigi Collina that night, I was like in sweats. I was cold. It was just ruthless. That's not what I expect in a Champions League game. It was absolutely shambolic. Just lots of, negative. And I remember flying home the next day crying, just in my seat, looking out the window, reflecting, thinking, my career's over. And so much. So I started drafting an email, apologising. This is what I'll do if I get the chance again. This is what I'll do in future. Take pictures of the kit, blah blah. So I put a lot of things. I give him a lot of things that I would put in place.
Yeah.
Strange enough, what I was going to put in place, he shared with all the referees. So all the referees did it for the future. But I'll never forget. He never spoke to us after for about a week. Never spoke. And then I got a message from UEFA. You're refereeing a Champions League game. And I got a message off him saying, don't do it again. And I can tell you now, I ran the hardest I've ever ran. I tried to referee the best I could ever run. And I gave him absolutely every bit of energy I had because I wanted to pay him back for what he did and give me a chance, another chance. And I remember after the game, he sent us a message saying outstanding. And it just like, all because he pushed us, but I made a mistake, but he gave us a chance straight away. And that, with the other people, I'm not sure I would have had that same chance.
Wow. He sounds like an amazing guy and a brilliant leader of people.
Yeah.
Can I ask you the secret to communication on a football pitch with footballers in the heat of battle?
Yeah, a lot of it was diffusing situations. I was never, some referees had a way of being probably cocky, if that's the word I've used. I never did that.
Yeah.
I did say things and treat them exactly the same. I would treat a superstar like I did a third division player. I treat them all the same. And I think it was fair to do that. I didn't give anybody any preferential treatment. I think the star players liked that I had that way of treating everybody the same.
Which, like, have you refereed Ronaldo, right?
Yeah, Messi,
Messi, Lewandowski,
yeah.
Like
the
greats.
Ibrahimovic, yeah.
Do they act in a different way on a football pitch?
They all want to win. They're all winners. And that's why, because the winners, that's why they're top of what their profession. And everybody wants to win. They're all trying and find ways to win football matches. When I got more and more experienced, I got into their heads. Right. I was preempting what they were going to do before they even done it. And that's what they liked, that they thought, my God, he knows what we're going to do next. But I also had relationship. What I felt it was, because Kalina was like that with me, I tried that same philosophy. I tried to not be mates with players, because never have a drink with them afterwards or socialise with them. Never had their phone numbers. But while we were on 90 minutes, I had to gain their trust.
Yeah.
One of them was decision making, of course. Not being nervous. There was a lot of factors around that, but I had to gain their trust. Once I gained their trust, the game becomes so easy. You know, you just had to make sure that you made the decision. But when you're making a decision, you have a lot of pressure coming. Could have a lot of pressure coming from the players, but if they trust you, they don't give you that pressure. They just leave you alone, thinking you'll make that decision. And that's build up of experience, but also the way you speak to them. I remember my first time at Real Madrid, and the tunnel was split. I don't know if it still is now, but it was split between two halves. And I always walked down the away side first half, just to show neutrality and to go out on the field. But I remember sitting for the second half. The away team had gone out, and I'm waiting for the home team, Real Madrid, to come out. And I'd cautioned Carvalho for a late foul. It was the only yellow card in the game. It was against Ajax, yeah, I remember. And I cautioned him, easy yellow card. And Ramos starts like, there was never a yellow card, like joking on. And I says, yeah. I says, of course it wasn't. I said, it was, you know, I remember him in the Premier League, and we're like laughing, you know. And he said something, and I just got my red card out of my pocket, and I gave him it, and more laughing. So all went to the pitch, laughing and relaxed. And the media the TV from Spain picked up on it and said, it's nice to see a referee having some humour with the players. And after that, the players trusted. That was my first time at Real Madrid.
Right. And
they trusted me that I was a human being, had a laugh. It was a little moment, diffusing moment, because I could have said, go away, you know, why speak to me like that? But I didn't. I diffused it in my way, and they responded to that. So I try to work with them to make my life easy. And if they made my life easy, then refereeing becomes so simple. It's when you're making a decision under huge pressure, that's when it gets even harder. But if you haven't got that pressure, yeah, you've got the crowd pressure, but if you haven't got the players' pressure, your job becomes more and more easy. And that's what I tried to do. And I still had my problems. I remember Adam Lallana. He didn't respond very well when it was Everton, Southampton, Christmas time. And I should have sent him off, really. And I told him I should have sent him off afterwards, like later on when we spoke about it, months later, because he decided the next day, it was all in the media, that I'd said that he'd changed since he'd played for England, because he abused us. And my defence mechanism was not to send him off. People say, we should have sent him off. What he said, I should have sent him off.
Yeah.
But do I win? Do I win that argument? if I send him off because that I haven't been consistent because I've managed other players in that way.
Yeah.
So I tried to manage him in that way, except he didn't react. He decided that he would go to his club, and his club made through the media that I'd said that he's changed since he played for England. And he was all apologetic next time I saw him. But I think how pathetic it was that I diffused the situation, which he had. His attitude had changed. That's what I'd noticed. He might have said, you've been the shittest referee since the Champions League final. I'd say you might be true. But I wouldn't have made it in the media, and that's some things that worked, but then some things didn't work. And then you have to reflect again, knowing that people like Alan Lallana, you don't speak to him in that way again. You don't, your management would be slightly different in that way. And people say, does that mean you give me a yellow card? I'm not saying that, but it's human when players are abusing referees. They very rare get second chances. The players who are gentlemen seem to get second chances.
What was the secret to managing Messi on a football field?
He was first time I ever refereed him. It was like the way he moved the ball. I started watching the ball, and I stopped. I had to say to myself the first time I can't watch the ball anymore. I've got to watch him, because I was dizzy the way he could move the ball. What I found was, because that he's going to be kicked. He's going to be fouled because he's a targeted player. That's human. It doesn't take a genius and a referee to work out that he's going to be targeted. So you've got to manage that situation. Certainly in and around the penalty area, inside the penalty area is slightly different, but you've also got to manage him as an individual. Sometimes I used to find if you don't whistle free kicks, there might be some contact, but if they keep getting contact and they don't receive a foul, at some point they're going to get frustrated. So you're trying to limit the frustration by, when they do get kicked, you've got to judge, is that kick enough for him to fall down? Is it enough to award a foul? Where it is in the field of play, because everybody knows that there's a higher threshold when it goes inside the area than it is on the halfway line. That's just football understanding. The contact has to be more because you're giving somebody a free shot at goal. It's easier on the halfway line to award the foul. And people say, yeah, no, it's not. It's the same. It's if you understand football knows that there's a different higher threshold, different areas. And it's just the way football is. But Messi itself, I refereed him once and I cautioned him, and he just didn't speak. But because he deserved it, he put his foot on another player. He knew he'd done it, and I gave him. But he had probably big respect for me because he sees me. Probably I had it easier because I refereed in the Premier League. They see you week in, week out in the Premier League, and also they see you week in, week out in the Champions League. They saw me in a different way, so my life becomes slightly easier, and I didn't have to find, as a young referee, you're having to fight with the players as well as deal with the game. That side of my game, because I come a leader in refereeing, that my life became easier. But that's just over years of experience and dealing with high level sportsmen and how to deal with them, because there's no point in saying about high level sportsmen, and I've heard referees say when they miss a goal, you've missed a goal. Everybody makes mistakes. That's not the way to speak to high level people. These people are the best and it's the same. I was trying to be the best referee in the world. We're human. Everybody makes mistakes. If we don't learn from the mistakes, then we'll never be the best.
And what's your memories of managing Ronaldo on a football field? Because I think of all the players that we've watched over the years, his will to win is beyond.
He was different, yeah. So he was different from Messi. Messi was an incredible football player. So was Ronaldo. But what I found with Ronaldo was he used to lift his team as well. It was just, he had this just something about him. It was when he was at Manchester United, a young player, he was like the captain type of thing. He was leading from everything. He was leading from example. I found him easier to deal with because he spoke more English. Messi didn't really speak much English. So Cristiano was easier to deal with. And I was lucky because the key moments of my career happened to his career. Winning the Champions League and the Euro final in that same year was incredible for him. But also it was the same period of my success. So his success aligned with mine. So we have the same, the same memories and the same.
And what was it like watching him lead at such close quarters? I mean, as close as I am to you.
I never thought him as a superstar. I just thought him as a world-class footballer, that I was privileged to be on the same field and being able to share the same experiences. Being involved in a Champions League, involved with the big crowds, with the great games. So I never seen him as that. I just knew that he was a world-class player that sometimes, even as a referee, when he did something amazing, I would say to myself, that's incredible. And there wasn't many players. I'm not saying not many. There was some players that I used to think, wow. There was some players, that they're really good football players, but they're not the elite. Ronaldo was, Messi was, Suarez was. There were some great players, and they just knew, you just sparked the game, and you were like, wow, did that really happen?
Listen, Mark, I've loved this conversation. I mean, it's we could talk for another hour, There's loads we can still talk about. I suppose I would just finish really with asking you about life now. I mean, you've been on a kind of journey of exploration, going to Saudi, looking after refereeing abroad, going in and working with Nottingham Forest close up, now refereeing in the Baller League. I mean, you seem to me like someone who just loves experiences, loves new things.
I loved the new experiences. The best thing I did was leave the Premier League as a referee. It opened up different experiences in my younger life. When I was in my prime, going to Saudi Arabia was an experience, a big culture shock. Changing kickoffs day before big matches. You're preparing mentally, and the game was called off. Just bizarre things happened.
Yeah.
China was another experience just before COVID, but it was a great experience. One of the best experiences I've ever had in my life, refereeing in China and living in China. And then COVID happened, and then I was lucky that UEFA called and said, would you go to Greece as head of refereeing? And I didn't realise what I was actually throwing myself into. But it was an incredible experience, knowing you're seeing football from a different side. It's not just football. There's wars, there's businessmen, there's a lot of politics, a lot of, high-profile people.
Yeah. I mean, you've got, I guess, refereeing out there, there's actual serious personal safety decisions that have to be made, right, when you're dealing with stuff.
Yeah, well, I wasn't refereeing in Greece. I was the head of refereeing, which was even worse.
There you go.
There was more, but because I was English, it was quickly established between the big owners that I was straight and that I was going to be accepted. Whatever happened on the field was straight. Everything I said, I did. I opened up the conversations of the referees. I opened up complete transparency, so they didn't think anything was untoward. And the minute I did that, they respected that. Even though they might lose, they knew that nobody else was causing any problems behind. So Greece was a great experience, but it was a life experience. And going back to survival, it was another survival moment in my life where I had to survive. And in the end, I remember having police outside my house because a team from Athens weren't going to win the title, and they were putting big pressure on because of the owner was upset that his team that he hadn't invested in weren't going to win the title that had been in the past. So there was them experience as well. But leaving Greece opened up new chapters. The relationship with Mr. Marinakis at Nottingham Forest and Olympiacos. That was an experience. The Ballers League. But what's great about the Ballers League, it's this younger generation now. I didn't know what all these platforms. I was always just like Twitter and Instagram and that. And there's also TikTok. I've never heard of TikTok till recently. But all of these YouTubers and influencers are actually powerful people. And you realize in football now and sport and life, a lot of the younger generation are going towards this type of...
Totally.
And it's incredible. I wasn't for it, but now I am. And now that I'm refereeing in these the younger people are coming up with this. But what's amazing is, going back to football over, say, the Ballers League, people appreciate what you're doing in the Ballers League. I don't take nowhere near as much criticism.
Yeah.
People appreciate your work.
The only thing I didn't like about the Baller League, you know, when John Terry started kicking off.
Yeah, but that's theatre. That's him just doing stuff for the media.
But I just don't think it's a great. I don't think anyway. It's a great
yeah, but
view for kids who are watching that. You know what I mean? I'm like, we're trying to talk about empathy, understanding, calming things down.
Yeah, but some people are always like that.
Yeah.
You know, John was like that on the field, and you know, we've had some run-ins, but we respect each other. You know, he was the first person that came to us after the Chelsea allegation. Next time I refereed Chelsea, and he came up and said, "Mark, all the best, no hard feelings." You know, I've got big respect for him. Just sometimes when he's got a reputation that he wants to do well as the manager in his team, and his team weren't that good. Fact. And he was doing stuff for his social media to try, and I was the easy target. But then in the end, I snapped, and people loved it that I did snap back, because you know, at the end of the day, I could say, "Well, look, John, you might be a better referee, but I'm good at taking penalties." You know, we can have that argument if you want, but I don't. I just, you know what, John, say what you want.
Also, by the way, he's very smart and knows those things go viral.
Of course.
The Ballers League are delighted because they know it's going to go everywhere and get millions of views. But
you know what? I think it was a great tournament, great experience, and I think it was great that the younger generation enjoyed it. Yes, it went over the edge a couple of times, and it was wrong what happened at street football, but in the end, I think it was a positive step forward that people realised that the Premier League have to be careful. The highest end of football have to be careful, because if we're not careful, there's an older generation watching football now. If we don't hit the younger market, in years to come, where's that market? That gap's gone. And they're going to have to be careful, because, you know, football isn't a sport anymore. It's an entertainment, and people need to enjoy that entertainment. And, you know, VAR, if it's destroying the entertainment or improving everything that technology that should be brought into football has to enhance the viewing. And if it's not great to watch, then unfortunately people switch off.
Some quick fire questions to finish with. The 3 non-negotiable behaviours that you think are most important for a referee.
Non-negotiable. Foul language. When it's personal. I'm not talking foul language. I'm talking when it gets personal. Cheating. I hate cheating. That's the biggest. And till somebody's strong with cheating, and I'm not saying it should be dealt with by the referee, but if a person's cheating, why they're not given a 1-match ban the next week is beyond me. It's just, cheating should be out of the game. Third one, I'm having to think. And just respect towards, you know, respect towards opponents and referees in general. I think everybody's a part of the entertainment business, and everybody should respect that entertainment business, and everybody has a role to play, even referees.
Yes or no to these changes? So in the US, 23 states have got specific sports official assault statutes.
Yeah.
Should the same be brought into the UK rather than just the generic assault laws that we have?
Yes, I believe in it, but I think we've got to find a way to, if a referee's assaulted, the issue you've got is in our current law system that it doesn't align to the sports, which means in general the player is found not guilty because there's no camera, and that's why referees are now wearing cameras.
Should we adopt the rule of the 10-metre enhancement if a player is abusive, like in rugby?
Definitely not.
Why?
It didn't work years ago and it won't work again. The problem you've got, what the benefit in rugby is you're creating space. Space is a huge advantage in rugby. When you sin bin somebody, for example, sin bin works in rugby, it won't in football, because you're creating that space wide. In football, you're just creating a negative. So sin bin, for example, you would just put 10 players behind the ball for 10 minutes. It would become a non-event. If we remember the 10-metre enhanced, 9.15 metre moving forward. So if you did it in the defensive half, the goalkeeper just spun it and it was pointless exercise, because that 9.15 isn't that important, because a goalkeeper can reach the edge of the penalty area anyway. It only ever got really positive, really difficult around the edge of the penalty area. It never got inside the penalty area, because I'm not sure a referee would really push the 9.15 inside because it's a penalty. But if you remember that day, and it changed the world, changed that rule, was it was Gavin McCann, Sunderland against Man United with David Beckham. And they knew David Beckham wanted that free kick 25 yards from goal or whatever many meters it is now. But he was in that perfect moment. And what Gavin McCann did was kick the ball away, which meant David Beckham had to move the ball to the edge of the penalty area, which meant he couldn't get the ball up and down. David Beckham was furious. Gavin McCann made the rule. So it's not for football. And I'm not sure the sin bin can work in football. I think I've said in the past, there is some law changes that can be done to enhance the game. One is there's too much time taken of corner kicks, goal kicks. I know the goalkeeper's now been addressed with the 8 seconds. It was 6 seconds before, so I don't think what 8 seconds is going to do. And throw-ins, we have a lot. Why do I have to have a player cautioned if he doesn't take it from the right position? Just give it to the other team. If they take too long at a corner kick, it goes to a goal kick. Make the game faster and more entertaining for the people.
What about playing clips in stadiums of controversial moments?
I'm all for. I am all for. And I believe that the microphone should be opened up at that point, like we do in rugby. So we've got full transparency.
Why have they not done that?
The issue you've got is in some stadiums, for the video, some stadiums have got issues with screens. That's one issue. The audio is still at that phase of making sure that the referees are comfortable. Some are, some aren't.
But that's now the job. So if you're not comfortable with being heard...
I did it in the Ballers League and it wasn't easy, but it's not easy, but it's got to be a step forward. Yeah. And I like when the rugby referees, they're just like talking to like normal. They don't have to be like really polite. And like, I mean in a way that, yes, Stuart Atwell, it's a foul. You're just like, look, watching the screen. Yeah, I see your opinion there. I can understand that. But look, go back one step. He slips into the challenge, therefore, I'm not sure that would reach the criteria of a red card. Are you comfortable with that to the VAR? Are you comfortable with that? Yeah. And then move on, like they do in rugby.
I personally think that's the biggest change that will change abuse of referees. If we can hear the conversation they're having and humanise them and understand the challenges of that job.
Yeah. And I think, but I think we've lost one of the biggest, and I think referees are guilty as well. We've lost the ability to manage. We've lost the ability of, I think referees have become too robotic and we've lost that, that human side of it. And I think fans are less engaging now. They just want to criticize now. They want to blame. There's such a blame culture now. But I think VAR has changed a lot the way referees are dealing with it. They're making more mistakes on the field of play than ever before.
Yeah.
That never happened in our day. Yeah, we made one every 5 matches, big ones, but we're seeing it more and more. And I think one thing that's done, it's the referees have lost the ability to make decisions in split second. We had to. Even though we might have not seen the full thing out with 2 eyes, we still had the feelings, we still had all our senses, all of our knowledge, all of our experience to make that split-second decision. The referees don't do that now with VAR. They just go, I'm not making it. I'll let the VAR deal with it.
Fascinating. I've loved this conversation. Final question. Your one golden rule for living a high-performance life after all of your experiences, the highs, the lows, the people you've spent your life around, what would you like to leave people thinking about?
Stay humble, be true to yourself, and just be kind. And I haven't always been kind, but I've learned over years to listen to others, be kind, understand how others work, and always push for your dreams, because everybody has a dream. But don't have your dream that is unachievable. That's probably one of people's downfalls in life. Yeah. You think you can achieve, I'm going to win the lottery tonight. That's unachievable, or highly unachievable. Think that you're going to get 3 numbers. That's a win. And that's the way you should look at life.
Thank you. Brilliant conversation, mate. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I love that. You know, right, that I love hosting high performance, but something else that I really love is taking the lessons and learnings from these conversations onto a live stage setting. And whether I'm standing in a small room in front of 10 people, or myself and Damien are on a stage in front of 5,000 people, We just love to take lessons from the likes of Gordon Ramsay, Fernando Alonso, Dame Stephanie Shirley, Usain Bolt, out into the world, sharing them with people like you. And we've been to South Africa, we've been across Europe, we've been to Dubai, we've been to the United States, but we want to do more. We are really passionate about spreading the lessons and the learnings from high performance. So if you want myself and Damien to come and spend time with you and your business, then all you have to do is hit the link below. I promise you, by the time we're finished, you will have a very different view about what high performance really is. Thanks for watching.